Apple's efforts in EVs rendered useless by Tesla. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. If this is your first time, welcome. If you're a repeat visitor, welcome back. Also wanted to note we have our 4 hens that are laying one a week, and very curious viewers, and it's fun to have some change of pace. First of all, I want to thank our Patreon supporters. We also want to thank our subscribers. If you enjoy the show, please take time to like and subscribe. The focus of today's conversation is the fact that it was announced that Apple would be coming out with an EV in 2024. And we thought this was an interesting news item that was worth review. The problem that's popped up with this, so we have basically 5 reasons why we don't think Apple's actually going to deliver an EV anytime soon, but I do believe that they'll spend at least $100 million over the next 4 or 5 years before shutting that project down. So there's a whole sort of list of reasons why it is that Apple's actually been spending money trying to figure out doing an electric vehicle at least since 2015, but it may have been since 2010. Tesla actually recently lost an executive that first was at Apple, then was involved in self-driving and all those types of things. And then that individual moved to Tesla, unsuccessful in terms of getting smooth operation of the autonomous driving software, and then he systematically went back to Apple. So we were kind of intrigued because there is a lot of movement between the 2 companies, and a lot of the projects that are being worked on, there's serious dollars being spent. So the first question mark is, why is Apple even bothering to think about cars? And the answer is that there's a huge problem that Apple has, and that problem is that they're so huge. The company, as you know, touched $2 trillion, and I think it might be back there by now in terms of its market cap. And a key component of any market cap of any company is its growth rate. And one of the problems that a company Apple's size has is that it actually has to be going after fairly large markets in order to establish and maintain its viability. And one of the largest markets in terms of dollars spent annually is actually automobiles. So it's a logical area for Tesla to look at, or Apple to look at, providing a solution and getting a portion of the revenue that might come from providing that solution. So I think it's a good idea. It's a logical thing for the company to be spending in that arena to try to see if they can deliver a product. The second component of what we wanted to review here is, sort of in general, reasons why we don't think this product is going to work and why that is. And we actually think they're going to shut this thing down, even though they're going to spend a lot of money between here and there. So let's go back and review some of Apple's products and what their tendencies are. In this case, what I wanted to review is the fact that you actually had, if you think about it, think of the difference between the iPad and a laptop. What kind of difference did we have? Well, this approaches something that's called the 10x rule. So what this is that anytime you deliver a product in Silicon Valley, in order for it to be impactful, there's something called the 10x rule, where you need to deliver 10 times the value to your customer in order to attract them away from their current solution. So think through in particular what happened with the iPad when it first came out versus the standard laptop. The problem with the iPad was that, or the laptop, is that when it came, the laptops at that time were in general settling on about an hour and a half of battery life. So the problem was, if you're an executive and you wanted to do work on a long plane flight, you'd bring 2 or 3 batteries with you. And then so now you were able to work for, in essence, an hour and a half times the number of batteries that you were carrying. When Apple came out with the iPads, you went from an hour and a half of useful life to as much as 11 hours of useful life for that laptop. So now you end up in an interesting position. Should you carry a laptop with one or two batteries, or should you go for an iPad and get all that extra life cycle that you could use as you were on a flight? And you add things like boot time, etc. The value proposition exceeded 10 times better than what the consumer was using. So I bring up the iPad in particular because we can put a real number on the 10 times value that you might see there. As you can see, the product became huge, obviously copied by competitors, and it has turned out to be a huge boost to the profit and revenue of the company. You could also make this argument in terms of the iPhone. If you think about the way phones were being used previously, as the internet on the phone became the norm, there are a lot of people that swore they would never give up their buttons on a screen with other devices. But the problem was, as the internet became dominant on the phone, you now needed that screen space in order to be able to have a robust experience on the web, be it watching movies, playing games, all these different niches that needed that extra screen space. It's also interesting to note that those who wanted to have a device that had a keyboard on it, they may be able to attach one, but they gave up on it as well because they were so happy with the other functionalities of that product. So what I'm angling towards here is just the fact that Apple has a process for how they identify new products they're going to deliver. What the core logic here is that if the solution we're offering is twice as good as what they currently have, that's kind of not enough. So if you use the battery analogy, all they're doing there is saying, if the new iPad offered twice the battery life as the old laptops, someone would just bring their laptop with them with an extra battery, and it eliminated the value proposition that might come from that addition. When it comes to the laptops versus the iPad, the value proposition is clear, and it has to be broad enough. What we're headed towards now is a very interesting space where you'll notice that Tesla has started a process where for the Model 3s and to get prices lower, they've actually started offering lower range, knowing that people who wanted to go long distance could simply recharge at a supercharger, and that would solve the problem. So there's an interesting phenomenon going on here where we're starting to see Tesla leveraging its competitive advantages, where even if you had a longer range battery or charged a little bit faster, we're kind of almost to the point where the consumers don't care. They're satisfied with the overall value proposition that Tesla offers. And this raises the question of what is unique that Apple could offer. The biggest thing that they could offer is perhaps a very inexpensive battery pack, which will allow them to drop price dramatically. And that's entirely possible. And if they were able to do this, we could definitely see them building a vehicle leveraging their access to this type of battery technology. Right now, as you can see, Tesla's really focused on being the leader on batteries, and that leadership has meant that it doesn't leave a lot of room for competitors. So kind of the number one reason why we think Apple will not produce a car is simply because, as of right now, there's nothing they can offer that offers a broad enough advantage over what they can get from Tesla to make it a viable effort to put that vehicle on the road. Could this change? Absolutely. Leaving out there for 2024 allows there to be a lot of technology change between here and there before those vehicles are delivered. And we know it would be beautiful. They would do some really creative things with it. But the challenge is that you have some well-entrenched competitors like Tesla and others. All of the large OEMs are now moving towards Tesla in terms of developing battery capabilities that allows them to be competitive. So I'm bringing all this up to just point out that we're in an interesting situation right now because Apple picked up 2 or 3 or 4 points related to this news announcement, I'm actually thinking that there's actually a lot of other things they could have announced that potentially are on the shelf that are more of a reflection of competitive advantages they represent. For example, look at what Amazon did with AWS, and they developed that excuse me, that computing capability for their store, and now they ported it over to offer it as a product solution for other customers. So in terms of large growth for Apple, my expectation is the real change you'll see that'll be significant, positive, etc., will really be focused on something in this realm. So the answer I'm coming up with is great idea. I definitely know that Apple is spending money right now to figure out if they can do something in cars, but they have an $18 billion annual R&D budget, and $100 or $200 million on cars over 4 or 5 years is well worth it. And frankly, while they're doing that, they can be developing sort of auto-based entertainment systems, much like what they're currently providing to some companies as is. So I think it's a good idea for them to keep researching it, but because they're not able to deliver significant value over current solutions, I don't believe that it absolutely makes any sense for them all to enter the space. And I do think there are a lot of opportunities associated with what their core competencies are currently for them to exploit. So great idea for Apple to spend money and consider doing something in the auto space. They definitely have to find new avenues to grow their profit and revenue, and looking at something in the transportation space, possibly cars, is actually a great idea. But unless they can deliver a significant benefit over what consumers currently get from the current providers, I really don't see a large reason for consumers to switch and for them to produce a product in the space, because they have a challenge with differentiation that they don't have in spaces where they already have long and strong relationships with the technology, with their consumer base, etc. So I'm actually looking forward to your comments on this. This ends our sort of discussion of sort of the Tesla-Apple battle competition when it comes to cars. The next thing I wanted to focus on is our health tips as usual. Wanted to encourage you to consider 25 leg lifts a day per leg with a 5-pound weight, recommended by Professor Dinesh at the University of Michigan, because it strengthens your quad muscles and reduces the chance you'll need to have knee operations as you age. The second suggestion was from a PhD cancer researcher at the University of Louisville who does upper respiratory cancer, and he recommended that you not go to bed within 2 hours of eating, preferably 4 hours, because that allows the food to digest, and once digested, that food will not potentially cause cancer as stomach acids digest that food. And so I think it's a great idea to note. Number 3 was, when it comes to good lovemaking, he recommended, in this case, we have a doctor or a PA in the DC area who recommended eat a salad or something fairly light as you enter the fact is that if you eat a salad, there's not a lot of blood flow there because there's not a lot of consumption for the body to do when it comes to stomach acids, etc. So the blood flow needed is relatively light to digest that. The problem you have is that if you eat a very large meal and you're going to do lovemaking right at the same time or soon thereafter, your blood flow is separated largely in 2 different directions, and it can affect your degree of enjoyment of that space. The third item we wanted to recommend is at least a 30 SPF or better on sunny days. And finally, no more than once a week for fried foods is also recommended. At any rate, we should have a giant Apple screen behind us, but I thought it'd be kind of interesting to have a little different background here in the form of our chickens. It should be noted that if you do have chickens at your house, I was told by the homeowner that they actually allow the chickens to walk around more rather than in the cage. And because the foliage above the area is limited, there's actually a hawk that spotted the chickens out and actually captured and killed one of them. And so there are now 4 instead of the 5 that were here. And so it's a note for those of you who have domestic animals in terms of being mindful of things that can happen. At any rate, this is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. Tschüss, German, au revoir, French, Lahithro, Hiru, Hoda Hafez, Farsi, Zdravstvuyte, hello in Russian, Ni hao ma, hello in Chinese, Namaste, Hindi, Hey do, Swedish, Dobrodzienia, Polish, and Hey, or Ohio gozaimasu, Japanese. And in Jamaica, we say, enough respect, walk good man. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day, and bye for now.